4 years ago, back in the days when Mass Effect 3 was ending and Kickstarters were beginning, Sean Vanaman and Jake Rodkin wrapped up work at Telltale on one of the most effective video game stories of all time, The Walking Dead Season 1, and then they left the company. Their fear of failure after knocking it so far out of the park, plus a new idea they conjured up with artist Ollie Moss, had them wanting to complete a more personal game that would be totally their own, Firewatch, a game that began as a notion about, quote, a guy who works in a fire lookout tower and something strange and mysterious happens, quote, which still describes the finished product pretty well. Firewatch is a first-person point-and-walk adventure game about exploring a color-saturated forest for the next bit of a story beat. There's a little bit of genre mixing going on here, as the whole game is probably more open-world than what you expect this sort of deal to be. Forest corridors are wide and visually nondescript enough to add some light exploration challenges that are solved via a map and compass. Although I feel some potential was lost with the opportunity they had to go all the way and enable this disable map location option by default. I'm a huge sucker for navigational-based gameplay gimmicks, and using the map and compass like an actual map and compass was a pretty nice treat. If you ever happen to find yourself owning Firewatch, I'd recommend giving this option a tick to create a slower, more cerebral and detail-aware playthrough. One that'll evoke the feeling of actually getting lost in some dark, spooky woods, because getting lost in dark, spooky woods seems to fit what the tone of the story is trying to evoke. A tone in which the isolation of living alone in a forest for weeks turns into fear and paranoia, stemmed from our character's overreactive imagination going wild in a vulnerable environment. It's a state of mind where other people are so distant and rare that they're only seen as black silhouettes. It's the perfect way for a calm summer to turn sour when a sinister plot device shows up. There's a MacGuffin hiding in these woods, tormenting you, stalking you through the bushes. The truth is out there, but the narrative-heavy nature of this game requires a narrative-heavy criticism. The unfortunate conclusion of this story wastes its excellent first two-thirds. A very intriguing build-up, helped by the game's remote setting and the charming writing between our two main characters, is wasted on an ending that wraps things up too quickly, in a way that somehow manages to be both too unbelievable and also not unexpected enough. It's just an unsatisfying ending both ways you spin it. It's unfortunate that the ending is what forms one's last impressions of Firewatch, because the rest of the game is so close to being spot on. Our character's backstory is completely exposed to us from the very beginning, by way of a quick little choose-your-own adventure, but for a good reason. It means there's no sudden lengthy monologues explaining his baggage midway through the story, because we already know everything, which makes our decisions over what to tell the other characters feel more intimate and informed. And luckily, the one other person to talk to is a classic example of skillful character building. Delilah, in that other tower way over there, is left completely unseen. She's confined to just the radio, which means that a lot of the player learning about how bad things are out there is done by the player's imagination. And it's nice that so much of Firewatch is all about teasing the player's imagination. With only their voices to go by, the characters' writing takes center stage. In fact, it's almost a coldly professional way of creating characters who are foiling archetypes. You have a sarcastic upbeat loner who's flirting with a sarcastic downtrodden loner. Delilah is the wise guy, and Henry, who we're piloting, is the straight guy, with both characters almost overacted by their vocal performances to help solidify those roles.
Oh, I can see my tower from far away.
Yeah, we experimented with hidden underground towers for a while, but we weren't really happy with the results.
So I'm with you all summer, huh? With whatever this sense of humor is.
Can you even believe? You're gonna love it.
But as entertaining as their banter is, the real hook here is the mystery behind these woods. It's the compelling secrets you have to uncover by way of map and compass. There's something hiding in these bushes, maybe even camouflaged in plain sight, but it's really just a vehicle to explore the relationship between these two characters. Your exploration of that relationship is riddled with an attention to detail, particularly with how the game makes use of clutter items. Taking different routes or responses teases replay value, but what's more clever is that a lot of what would be typically labeled as moral choices are done without menus or breaks in gameplay. Instead, you can exercise a few, very minor alterations in story just by knocking a few clutter items around. Search out in the woods and find an old baseball cap, handwritten letter, even a granola bar, take them back home, and they'll follow you around as the game fast forwards through days and weeks. They'll stay or go around the forest in ways that make sense within the forest. So given its size, its scope, and its detail, it's unfortunate that Firewatch isn't all it could have been. I went through it twice, and on both occasions, it's easy to pinpoint the part where everything goes astray during the last hour. On top of the internal logic of the ending just feeling poorly thought out, it also feels like the plot had a couple hours planned for it that didn't make it to the final version. A full season of The Walking Dead episodes gave us about a good 12 hours to build relationships between the viewers and the characters, who were also just as, if not more so, big examples of archetypes. But with all that extra time, the narrative gets to reinforce their traits through repetition and gradual revelations. On the other hand, Firewatch has much less to work with. There are only two real characters, one of whom is completely unseen and the other of whom has no secrets left for the viewer, but the story still fails to balance that greater focus with its shorter length. Here's another way of looking at it. There are two concurrent arcs. The Hook, which has to do with the spooky forest mysteries, and the Moral, which is more about destructive egos and unrequited desires, and neither arcs are resolved to satisfaction. So whether you come for a pulpy X-Files detective story, or to get caught up in a bad romance, you'll probably be disappointed either way, because both routes end too soon. It shows us that even the best game writers still have a lot to learn about balancing a story's ambition with a video game's workload as they work out how this wacky new medium works. Firewatch's ending closes the game with too much chaos and excitement to work as a kind of self-aware avant-garde message, but it's also not fantastical enough to work as popcorn entertainment either. It's not that it doesn't try. It starts strong enough, it looks great, it sounds great, music's good, voice acting's fine, there's even the cool little hiking elements you gotta play with, but then 4 hours later, it's hard to tell exactly where it wanted to go with all that. And those 4 hours, that's another aspect here. $20 for this game gets you about 4.5 hours of what's roughly equal to 2 episodes of an entire Telltale series, trying to wrap up all of its drama in a third of the time. And the story clearly suffers for it. Also add to that a PS4 version that is uncommonly below the PC's standard. It's rife with framerate issues, weird analog acceleration, and I got 2 hard loading screen crashes in one playthrough, even though this version clearly kicks graphical fidelity down quite a few notches below other much faster and more stable console games. It's just weird to see a game this short and focused come out feeling so rushed. So whether I'm judging it by the artistry or the technology, it hurts to say that it looks like Firewatch couldn't stand the heat and had to get out of the kitchen. It needed some more time to bake in the oven. The passion put into it just wasn't scorching enough. I could go for days, but I'm burnt out by now.
I'm not even in the mood for wordplay. That's how wound up all this shit has me.
There's some old snowmobiles out here.
That's crazy.